Hello, this is Joe Walensky, and I'm currently the president of the Puget Sound chapter of the Society for Technical Communication. And I'm here to talk with a special guest who will be providing some educational services to the chapter, Neil Perlin. Hello, Neil. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Joe.
Where are you speaking to us from?
Outside Boston, Massachusetts, where it's gray, rainy, with sprinkles of snow.
All right, exactly the same here today, but with no sprinkles of snow because we rarely get that. But glad to have you involved here. And before we talk about the activity that we have coming up, I just wanted to let people get a little bit better idea of what you're involved with. So, what types of things are you actively involved in?
Well, at the moment and for a long time, I've been very busy with Flair, doing training, doing consulting, doing development. I still do some work with RoboHelp, but that seems to be declining. But probably my biggest focus right now has been the move into mobile app development. And I actually do a lot of work with a company called PhysiApps that makes a GUI mobile app development tool. In other words, think Flair for apps. It hides all the code. So far, the fastest app I've ever created using this tool was 8 hours flat, which actually flabbergasted me and the client. But the thing worked fine. So I do a lot of their training, and I'm talking to a company in Europe about doing some training and consulting for them over there. So this is actually pretty active, and it's a lot of fun.
I know you've been doing work for a long time with traditional help authoring tools, including the MadCap suite and specifically with Flair. So, what types of training classes do you do related to Flair? Maybe before that, you could just briefly describe to people who aren't familiar with Flair what that's about.
Sure, glad to. Think of Flair as a tool that you would use to develop online content. It's not a help authoring tool. These tools haven't just been limited to doing help authoring for years. And you can now use them to develop almost anything that can be put in online form, ranging from traditional help, but also to documentation, to training, to marketing and sales pieces. And the nice thing about these tools is that the output now can run on pretty much anything from paper like a PDF to a traditional desktop or laptop screen. But they can also single source using responsive output so that you can generate one output that will run on anything from a desktop screen to a tablet to a smartphone. So they're pretty cool. And in effect, these tools long ago went from being help authoring tools to being almost like specialized web development tools, which is what they are today.
Well, yeah, that's good to know. I think people in our constituency are, always looking to keep up on the latest with tools. You do have a webinar that you're doing for our chapter that we're going to be scheduling, and so I thought maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Could you pull up your slide to the topic that you'll be talking about?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, good. So we can see that now. So the topic, what are all these features? Single sourcing with Flair. Single sourcing is certainly, a topic that I think is of broad interest to our constituency, regardless of what tools they happen to be using. So maybe just briefly talk about how you present single sourcing and what types of things that you'll cover in this webinar.
Absolutely. Single sourcing has been around for a long time. It's been around for decades. And it's a pretty simple idea. The idea that rather than creating one source of content for each output that you need to generate, you create one source of content for all the outputs. And then using various single sourcing features, you can use that single source of content to generate your outputs. Generally, this falls into two categories. There's conditions, conditionality, which is really a categorization feature that lets you specify which output a particular piece of content should go in. And then there's reusable chunks of content, which covers things like variables and snippets, chunks of content that get reused in multiple places, multiple topics, and that might have to change. Something like a product pre-release code name for a software product. So it's called XYZ before release, but then it's called ABC after release. And you have to make sure that the name is accurate anywhere. So single sourcing with reusable chunks of content will let you do this. I focused very specifically in this webinar on Flare 12 because prior to version 12, MATCAP had a lot of extremely powerful single sourcing features, but in version 12, they went what I'd say is a little bit creatively wild, and you can now do single sourcing in almost every single phase of Flare. So, for example, you can apply conditions to everything in Flare, including conditions, which sounds a little odd, and everybody that I know has tried it on the grounds that you've got to be kidding. But it does work. You can use variables as variables. You can insert a variable into a snippet, a larger chunk of usable content. You can assign conditions to glossaries, to tables of contents. Almost anything in Flare is now conditionalizable or single sourceable. So one of the things I do in this webinar is explain what all these features are, or as many as I can fit into 1 hour. But the other thing, just as important, I think, is that I try to make the point that you can no longer wing it. When we do projects, there's a long, sort of dishonorable history of winging it. Let's get the project rolling and we'll work out the specs once we get started, which is nowadays is just a recipe for disaster with this many single sourcing features. So I'm a big proponent of documenting the project, documenting your settings before you start the project, and then keeping that documentation up to date. That's one of the big points that I try to make in this webinar.
All right, great. Well, thanks for providing the preview for that, and we'll be getting the information out to all the people that are attached to our chapter. Is there any certain place people can find more information about you in the interim? Do they Google your name, or what's the best way to go?
Absolutely. You can Google my name, Neil Perlin, Perlin, or you can go to my website, hyperword.com.
All right, good. Just like in the logo that we can see on screen.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Well, it was nice chatting with you, and we'll be back together when we do the webinar a little bit later.
All right, very good. I'll look forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.